Now I want to introduce to you Jerry Turner and his property. Now what we're going to do tonight, typically the way the market is right now, we're trying to present deals that kind of churn and burn a little faster. Have a 3 to 5 year hold model. You're in, you make your money, you double your money, you move out. If you want to hear about that, come this weekend. I'm sure David will share some of his. That's really his model, 12 to 24 months probably. He's doubling, tripling his money, whatever, and he's getting out. Those are the type of cases that we typically show tonight. This one's different. Jerry and I joined about the same time. If I remember correctly, you bought this in 2009? Yeah? 2009. So it's a long-term hold, not the normal thing. Most of our members haven't been members as long as we are at this point. And you're going to see it full circle. Not only are you going to see 11 years of history, the money that he's returned to his people, but it's under contract right now for sale, and he's calculated for us what the total returns are going to be once it gets closed. So we're going to go through all that. Jerry, why don't you come on up? And you're mic'd up, right? So you don't need that.
Okay. Can you hear me? Good. So I always ask this, how many of you are brand new to Lifestyles, not members, coming here to check it out, see, oh, good. Those are the smart people. Okay, excellent. That's right. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
We got the cameras. Excellent. Okay, and the rest of you are members. Excellent. Good deal. Well, let me tell you a little bit about us. My wife Sharon and I are a little unique. Most of the people that are leads in Lifestyles, in fact, I would say pretty much all the mentors learned about real estate firsthand in Lifestyles. We came in with a lot of institutional real estate knowledge. I'm a career real estate appraiser, I'm a broker, a consultant. I work for some big firms, banks. My wife has got a very similar pedigree. She's also an accountant. So we got to Lifestyles in a somewhat unique way. Where's the couple that has the condo in College Station? There they are. So I'm at lunch with a guy that used to work for me at KPMG, and I said, hey, my daughter's going off to college, A&M. I'm thinking, I'm going to buy a house for her to live in. I will rent out the other units. We'll make money. It'll be a good thing. He said, oh, you need to check out Lifestyles Unlimited. I said, what's that? Sounds like a swingers club, right? He said, oh, no, it's this real estate group, and you get together, and they're really good, and okay. I said, well, what makes them special? Well, they got a radio show. I said, then absolutely not. I'm not going to get to go to a place that has a radio show. So I come home, and I tell Sharon, I said, hey, this nutcase buddy of mine, who's also a member, told me to, go join Lifestyles Unlimited. Oh, they're a tenant in one of our buildings. She works for the company that owns this building. And their office was in this building. They said, we keep seeing people going in there all the time. I've been meaning to go in there. So we kind of dared each other, to suck it up and go in there and listen to the sales pitch, right? Well, one thing leads to another. We weren't thinking about apartments. I was going to buy that house, right? Make money off that house. We got good jobs. We don't need anything else. We thought we knew everything about real estate, and that's what we thought. We were wrong. Next slide. So we convinced each other that we needed to join Lifestyles, kind of dared each other, right? Went to the 2-day session. There's a lot of good information, but I was on the phone because I had a joint venture with Lehman Brothers to buy closing military installations and redevelop them. Well, you know what happened to Lehman Brothers, so Lifestyles was really the only ship left. And we joined in 2007. The Great Recession hits in 2008, so it kind of slowed down our acquisition. And 2009 rolls around, we buy a property out of receivership. Not foreclosure, receivership. Receivership is when the lender is too afraid to foreclose. They want the original borrower still on the hook. So we structured a deal with a lender. Guess what we paid for the property? $1,645,000. Guess how much out of pocket we paid? $0. He financed the whole thing. But that situation doesn't exist today. But we took full advantage of it. We got them to finance their own deal. Non-recourse, day one. 7 years of financing, we put in $915,000 in cash, and the property was 40% occupied. The minute we took over, it became 20% occupied, and we got to work. We went in there and fixed it up. Rehabbed $915,000 we put into that property. Plus, we put in over $1 million after the initial renovation.
So this is the story about continuing to feed the golden goose, right? And we're going to talk about the golden eggs that were coming out over time. So let's take a look at...
Hold on, go back one slide. Whoop. You skipped something. You just lost everybody out there watching. Most people in this room don't have $1.3 million to invest. Could you break that down a little bit, you guys? How many investors, that sort of thing? I appreciate it.
Well, we didn't have $1.3 million. We had $750,000 in our 401k, and then we pulled it out. The Great Recession, thankfully, just cut that in half for us. So we can't buy it. We didn't have enough money to do it ourselves. We could have bought it, but we couldn't have renovated, right? So we got like-minded people. Look to the left right now. Look to your left. Look to your right. Those people, okay? They believed in it. They believed in us. They believed in our ability to get this done, and they jumped in. They
so how many investors do we have?
20.
20 different families. And just so you know, for people watching, because we have people watching nationwide, and this might be all, I don't know if all your members are from Houston, but you'll find people from California, even though they're communists, we don't care. Hawaii, doesn't matter, Greece, everybody can invest, and they invest different amounts of money. People can invest $25K, $50K, $100K in various deals. I don't know what his minimum investment on this one was, but would you mind sharing? So his minimum in this deal, his minimum investor was a $50K. Did you have all your people, were they from here in Houston or all over the place?
No, I mean, back in the early days, it was Houston,
smaller,
and San Antonio was new, and Dallas was new, so it was smaller. They were all over Texas.
Right. So, and I want people to understand that are watching. We have people from California doing this, just so you know. And so I'm going to ask you this, Jerry. Did every one of your investors in this deal come out there and look at this property?
No.
So and that's another thing. Live where you want to live, invest where it makes sense. So this deal made sense once you hear all the numbers. So even if you're a guy from California, you don't have to physically ever be there. You just want your check in the mail. Does that make sense? So I want you to understand those passive investors are not doing the work. Jerry is, right?
We did all the work.
There you go. That's all I want to cover.
Right. Okay. Let's go take a look at what Casa del Sol looked like. So that was the feeder shot. It's at Bissonnette and the Beltway. If you look on the left, you see all those trees grown over. You can hardly tell there's an apartment complex there, right? Cedar shake siding, powder blue. It was pretty much hideous. So if you look at the after, that pops, doesn't it? Well, what we realized is in that submarket, the Hispanic community was underserved. And we knew we had to paint it. We were going to paint the brick because the brick was all over the place because foundations were moving. It was just a disaster. And so I was at the post office box next to a supermercado. Anybody know what that is? That's Walmart's shopping center, right? And I'm looking at the building, I'm going, wow, look at those colors. I mean, that screams Latin America, right? So I said, let me call Bentonville. I called Bentonville, and after working my way through all the operators, I got hold of the person that was in charge of color coordination. I can't remember her name. I'll call her Melissa. Melissa, this is Jerry Turner. I'm in Houston. I saw your property, and I love the colors. I said, how'd you guys come up with those colors? Oh, we hired a consultant. I said, really? Was it expensive? Oh, we spent over $1 million. I said, can I get your palette? Sure. What's your fax number? Still the best deal I've ever gotten from Walmart. So we put colors on the building that popped. And for people from Latin America, it screamed, this is a great place to be, right? Would you put this on your house? Probably not. I tried. Sharon wouldn't let me. Next slide. So here's the pool. Kind of mundane, doesn't pop, a lot of overgrown foliage, right? So we put the paint on the buildings. That made a difference. And we're looking at that blank wall. We said, that looks terrible. We painted it yellow to start with. And a few months after we started leasing, Sharon found this street artist. And he went out there for $300 and painted a beach scene. To this day, Some of our buildings would get tagged, graffiti, kids. They've never touched it. They love it. It's like an amenity to them. Next slide.
I'm just noticing, looking at the picture, and just because I've been here recently, but there's a pergola out there too, so you've continued to do improvements even since these pictures were taken.
That's one of the things we try and do on every property. To keep it fresh, you've got to keep investing. So there's a playground actually on this property that's not in the photo because we put it in there 6 or 7 years later. Okay, so a lot of the units were just bombed out. Terrible. The photo on the left is after we cleaned it up and they're starting to do the rework. Photo on the right is what the finished product looks like. Next slide. Let's talk about returns. So here's where the math meets the road, right? So our original projection, because I'm a commercial real estate appraiser, I'm used to running 10-year cash flows. Well, the last 2 years, we went off the cash flow scale. I just kind of inflated it along with the rest of the years because we never projected out that far. We didn't think we'd own it. We thought we were going to own it 5 or 6 years like everybody else. But if you look at the returns that we committed to, are they making a great return in the first year? Holy moly, that sucks. What about the second year? 1%? Third year, we're hitting stride. Look at what we actually did. That's in green.
So we have a couple of different models to put things in generically, and it's yield play versus value play. A yield play is something you're going to buy it, it's already making money, it's going to send you money month one, and then you're going to try and improve it from there. A value play is something, as he said it was broken when he bought it. It was not producing cash flow. They spent a lot of money up front to make it what you see in those pictures, and that's why it wasn't returning any money. But I want you to focus on those green numbers and look at the year over year over year over year as they've gotten this thing rolling, and they've continued it rolling for 10 years now since it started cash flowing.
So year over year, we kept making more money, right? Let's look at it on a graph. Next slide. So the red is what we actually did. The blue is what we promised.
So this is under promise, over deliver, right? And that's what he did. Every year he's telling his investors, we think we're going to do 10%, 12%, whatever it is, and then he gives them a little bit more.
So as an appraiser, your world is what would the market do? So anytime I model a financial analysis, I'm modeling competent and prudent management, not exceptionally good management. So we were exceptionally good managers. So if you look at what we've been able to accomplish, it's been eye-popping. Next slide.
Well,
yeah, that's right, my bullet points. So what do you think happened in 2021? Holy moly, Jerry, you didn't hit your projection, right?
Reinvested.
What's that?
Reinvested.
He said reinvested. No. Insurance. Our insurance rate popped, not because we had claims, but because everybody else in Houston had claims, and the insurance rate popped.
Yeah, despite the fact that we all know that this whole town flooded in 2017, it took a couple years for the insurance market to catch up. And so we just had a long discussion about this earlier today, and that's what happened to him in 2021, totally unforeseen.
Well, let's look at the next slide real quick. So when you look at the revenue, this is actual. I spent an entire day hunting through old financial reports.
When we talk about this weekend, a type B, anal, conservative person, they have it to the dollar. That's type B. You see how he has lots and lots of numbers, bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. What matters in the end? What's in it for me? What are we going to get a rate of return?
Right.
He'll get to that. Don't worry.
So
I know you type A's want the numbers already, but.
So take a look at 2020 and 2021, the revenue. That's what we actually collected. That's a huge increase from 2020 to 2021.
So,
But
I'm sorry, I
Go
thought you
ahead.
were done. So I was going to tell you, the generic to take off of this, and David is going to go way in depth and help explain these numbers this weekend, but everything that we do, everything that's valued, the way that these things get appraised is off the NOI. That stands for net operating income, and there's a multiple that's put on that. Net operating income is revenue, your rents, all the other income, the pet fees, the late fees, the reserve parking, whatever else you've got baked into this model, minus the expenses, equals net operating income. And then after you pay the mortgage, debt service, these are the same cash flow numbers that you saw in green on the other slide. And that's what ended up in the
Dude,
investor
you're
pockets.
outside the tape.
That's all right, I get yelled at for
Tape
that
on
all the time.
floor. We can't go outside the tape. Okay, so if you look at it, expenses popped, right? We're on track for revenue growth, but expenses popped. That's what we have to manage. That's what a lead does. That's what a syndicator does. It's our job to manage this process. Next slide.
And then if you thought that slide was confusing, let's see what it looks like as a graphic. Type B.
It's easy.
Most important, let's look at the yellow box, because that's where he summarizes everything that's in those numbers. Okay, go
So
ahead.
our average revenue growth over the entire holding period was 9.3% per year. Expense growth, average, 5.3%. Average NOI growth, 24.1% per year. Our average cash-on-cash return, 13%.
All right.
Really, what it comes down to, guys, is what's in it for me. If you're new, all this stuff seems like gobbledygook to you. It would be like investing in a bond, making 13% return a year. Who'd be okay with that on average? But wait, there's even more.
Yeah.
It's tax-free if done correctly. Who'd like 13% tax-free? What's a technical term for that if you make 13% tax-free? Pee in your pants excited. Good. There you go.
All
I'd
right.
like to say you can go home, but there is more.
Wait, there's more. We even put it on the slide for you. So we make money several different ways in multifamily. All we've talked about on all these slides so far is what you're going to get, your dividend, your cash on cash, your mailbox money, okay? Let's move on to refinances.
So what does that mean? Well, we created so much value, so much increase in the net operating income that it was worth a lot more, and we could refinance out of our old debt at 6% interest to new debt at 4.3% interest, and we got cash out. We got almost 90% of our original investment out in 2012.
So remember how much the group invested in this deal to begin with? What was it, $1.3 million?
$1,360,000.
They got $1,122,000 out on their first refinance. So in addition to the cash flow, a lump sum, not quite 100%, but I don't know what the math is, 85, 90%? Not bad.
Okay with that. Woo.
Yeah. And that was in 2019. We're only 2.5, 3 years into this deal right
Well, wait, some people are new and they might not understand what that means in simple English. When they pulled all their money out of it through a loan, how much taxes did they pay at that point on that money? Zero, because it's a loan. So you got all your money back tax-free. Who'd be okay with that so far? And there's still more, right?
So wait, we kept raising net operating income. And the lender, we called the lender up and said, hey, this is a Fannie Mae loan. I think we're eligible for a supplemental. Yeah, you are. I said, well, how much in a supplemental could we get? Oh, well, I think you could get $1,236,000. Do you want it? Sure.
So 3 years later, you got your money back again.
And you still own it.
And you still own it.
Now, when you're a member, we had at last year's expo, a member, a passive investor member, explain how he stacked all of his investments and what his return was and how his net worth grew over time by doing this. So you got your cash flow, you got your money back, you go do another deal. You got more cash flow, you got your money back again, you go do another deal. Those do the same thing, you go get 2 and 3 and 4 more deals. That is a fantastic presentation. So when
what
you remember, go find it.
What happens if we'd sold it in 5 years in 2014? Okay, we get a bunch of money. Now we're going to get taxed on it, right? Why not get a bunch of free money and not get taxed on it immediately? Next slide.
See, Jerry's a great American. He doesn't want to pay taxes.
But wait, there's more. Again,
But wait, there's more.
this is what's going on right now.
It's under contract to sell. So bottom shoppers, when you're a syndicator, they'll call you up and, oh, we want to buy your property, we want to buy your property. Well, 3 or 4 years ago, I used to run them off by saying, sure, $10 million and it's yours. What does that show you? It's under contract for 40% more. Is it time to sell?
Yeah.
It was time to sell. We had a great 12-year run. Let's look at the numbers. So our total combined returns, because our sales price is so big, it makes the others look small.
Yeah. I like on this slide, you got all these little blips, what you get every year, and then these things look small, but this was 100% of your money back compared to what's about to happen in about 45 days.
Plus that 13% return,
Yeah.
Exactly.
cash on cash as well.
So let's look at that one. So the holding period was over 12 years, will be over 12 years. Our total invested was $1,360,000. Our total cash on cash return, that's how much we sent out every month, right? Not the refi, not the sale. Total was 155.7%. Next one. Our total net on the refi is 173.4%.
Got to have that 0.4.
Our total resale is 735.3%. That gives you a combined total return of 1,064.5%.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Who
So,
likes these numbers better than single family?
next slide.
Now,
Wait, there's really one thing. For these investors that were in this, you and Sharon were running the deal, doing all the work, dealing with the employees, dealing with the phone calls, dealing with all that. How much work did your investors do?
Well, Mike Morehouse, hold your hand up, Mike. Every now and then we'll get investors that want to come hang out with us and learn from us. Sure, come on, jump in my truck. You can start at my house, and we'll do that for as long as it works for both of us. Mike was the only one that showed up. Mike is a retired engineer. He was there with us for 9 months until we finally leased the unit we were sitting in out from under us. And he would walk around and check the contractor's work and bring back
Wow.
schematics of what they were doing wrong. So I give a lot of credit to Mike. He was
that's
a
an
big
active
Hey, Mike.
passive.
That is the most active pass I've ever. Okay, in the past 3 years, how much has Mike been out there?
I don't know.
Mike,
Once
were
a
you ever
year,
out there?
once a year, right?
0!
We do a once a year walkthrough of the property, and Mike's usually there.
He
Next
just said
slide.
he hadn't shown up in 3 years. Okay.
So why didn't we sell it sooner? Well, it's simple. Go ahead and show them. If you look at it, the market wasn't done working for us. So this is our original purchase price, right? You don't want to sell it for less than that. The red line is the value that we created. If you take that NOI based on what we originally bought it on, the return we were expecting, that's what we created through hard work. The market did the rest of the work. So while the market is rising, you stay on the horse because it's going to lead you to great places. Next slide. How did we achieve this? Well, it all starts here, right? We partnered with the best, my boss, Sharon. She knows more about operations than I will ever know. A lot of training, a lot of hard work, networking with folks in this room, consulting with other subject matter experts, conferring with other investors, and earning the trust of the people that give us money. Next slide.
And then the photo there, we have things that we call road trips. So once you're a member, at least once a month, we get together right here. We take a slide presentation like this, but we go much more in depth. He really explodes this out. He gets to take his type B out on all of us for about 2 hours. And then we all go to lunch, and then we go to the property and we walk around it and we do hands on hand.
Next slide.
And let me explain a little bit deeper for new people how powerful it is. Think about it. If you're investing in a deal, once you want to walk around it, see what it's like, touch it, can you imagine if this guy was buying an Exxon station and this guy over here owns a Sunoco? Do they open their books and share them with each other? But here at these road trips, he'll open up his books and share any number you want to know. Who would like that type of information? That's how we all grow together. That's like-minded people here. We have a
Just
lifestyle.
did. So, how did it change our lives? They're just stuff we don't worry about anymore. Anybody here still worried about a promotion, a raise, performance review? God forbid. What do you worry about? It's not what I worry about. Next slide.
He worries about going scuba diving.
Yeah. So we're going to close on Casa del Sol. We got 2 grandchildren coming in May.
Oof.
Our long-term goals, stay hungry. Build a legacy, surprise ourselves, build lasting relationships, and send back maps. Next slide. Questions? Oh, who's on our team? Dell, the T&L, Lifestyles, Greystone, and a bunch of our investors.
And just to explain, TNL stands for the next level. It's a group of us that we got together before this meeting started today, and we shared information about what's going on out there. We talked about loans, we talked about evictions, we talked about rental assistance programs. I don't know what else we talked about, but we covered the gambit for 2 hours talking about things. And as he said, we open up our books, we talk about what's going on.
I will be right back. My apologies, folks. I will be right back to take questions.
Another thing really quick, guys, I want to bring out to you. I don't know if he brought it up. Did he bring up that he was a national winner?
No.
Can you explain that to him?
Yes.
What that means? Because look over there, guys, the 2014 winner. Notice it's the same guy, a little bit younger and better looking back then, but you get the point.
Yes, it was probably this property in 2014.
Yep, it was.
Have y'all talked about the banners at all? David? No? Okay, so lining both sides of the room here, we have award winners both at the local, the state, and the national level, and that's what you'll see along the side here. And you will see winners from every year dating back to since I started, before I started, probably 2006 or something like that when we started applying for these awards. So in Jerry's case, he was actually Independent Owner of the Year. That's not a property award. That's an actual National Apartment Association Owner of the Year, and we have won that award how many years in a row?
Since 2006.
Since 2006.
Now, I want you to think about it. Most of you people don't know what that means. Let's take a good sports team. Let's take basketball. What basketball team you have? The Rockets? How many championships have they won?
2.
Okay, they suck. We won't talk about them. Let's talk about a good team, the Spurs. How many championships the Spurs won? 5, right? You got to realize, first we have apartment awards. This isn't a lifestyle things at the local level, and you got to win there. Then you have the state level, right? Then you have the national level. At the national level, there's up to 40,000 different apartments out there competing for this award. Now, I want you to think about that. That would be like Popovich, the coach of the Spurs, firing the entire team and taking brand new people that never played basketball before from high school, going against the NBA. What's their chance of winning? Very slim, right? That is a testament to the mentors and the program Dell put together, because we're taking people that never did real estate before, not in Jerry's case, but in most of our students have never done real estate before. And they're able to sit there and beat out all these other teams. Think how hard that would be. And then firing that entire team and getting a whole new team the next year. Wouldn't that be powerful? We're not the only group out there teaching this stuff. There's the Grant Cardones of the world and the Kiyosaki's of the world. How many championships have they won like this? The answer is 0. But here at Lifestyles, because we teach best product, best price, and the right way to run properties ethically, we win those awards. So give Jerry a hand because he's a 2014 winner.
All right, come on back up. We've got a little bit of time for some questions, so let's take those. Microphone right there.
Do you know what your average rent growth was on that property per year?
I think it's on there. I think our revenue was, want to go back?
It's probably in all these numbers that he buried back here.
Yeah. There we go, 9.3% average.
Oh, there you go, yeah.
So I just took the 2010 to 2021 and came up with an average. If you wanted a true internal rate of return type number, that would take a little more calculation. I think you guys have the stomach for.
It's on there. It's I was on the next slide. It was like 33%, I think, was the IRR.
That was cash flow. Yeah, that's cash flow. That's not on revenue growth. But here's the thing is if you can push revenue growth north of expense growth, you get exponential growth, which you can see here, to the net operating income, and that's what drives value. And
yeah, remember, there's a correlation, not just rent growth, but against the delta between the expenses. That's what he's talking about.
So your job is to create a package that is attractive to the market, right? People want to come there, they want to live there, and they want to tell all their friends to come there and live there, right? That drives revenue. The expense side is managing your personnel, managing your repairs and maintenance, taxes, insurance, everything else. That's where all the work goes when you're doing day-to-day blocking and tackling. Good question. Somebody else had a question?
Ooh, that's really loud. Are you guys doing a cross segregation analysis?
Cost segregation. So let's say you buy a property for $1 million, right? And the land is worth $100,000. You have $900,000 of improvements. The IRS lets you depreciate that over a 30-year period, plus or minus. But if you do some analysis on the front end, you can separate that $900,000 into long and short-lived items. So the long-lived items would be the wall, the slab, the roof, that kind of thing. Short-lived items can be doors, it can be ovens, it can be flooring, curtains, you name it. That can move about a third of that, which would be $300,000, into short-lived items, so you get accelerated depreciation, and that benefit accrues. You always want to do that. Make sure your lead knows how, and most of them, if they've been mentored by Lifestyles, do, because even though you may not be able to use all of the depreciation against all of the distribution that you get or the returns you get, it accrues. It rolls over year over year over year. So you're building a bow wave of write-offs that you can use against capital gains, recapture, and income tax.
So I know that was Greek for new people. I will spend about an hour explaining that in common English so even Aggie people can understand it, okay? So I will teach that this weekend. But his question was, did you use cost segregation or did you not?
Yes.
Oh, that was the answer. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
I knew I'd get a one-word answer out of him eventually.
Jerry, great presentation. And now that you've done such a wonderful job, what would be next for you? Doing active or passive?
Well, so as you can imagine, when you get $10 million in cash and you've got a shelter at $13.4 million, that's a lot to pay in taxes, right? So there is a vehicle that David will explain during the two-day. It's called a 1031 exchange. So we take that money, we reinvest it within 6 months into another deal, and we don't pay taxes on it.
So here's what you need to learn. Defer, 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 and die. And never pay tax again. Who likes that idea? So what he's talking about, 1031, I did one the other year for $2 million. Guess how much tax I had to pay that year? Nothing. In fact, I got back $28,000. God bless the IRS. Who's with me? See, we'll teach you that.
So you said originally you bought the property with 750 out of your 401 with the passive, obviously. But my question is, as a lead investor, don't you have to have the purchase price in your account in order to get the loan?
No,
okay, because I thought I read something about.
You're talking about net worth to buy a property. He might have had other signers, key principles, that sort of thing. But we're getting too much in minutia. That'll cover it.
Just curious.
No, I understand. He had to raise up, our first-time lead investors have to put up 15% of the capital involved. He decided to put in more than that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Does that help you? That's one. I know you've been to my.
It's hard to get people to follow you when you don't have any skin in the game.
Who likes the idea our lead investors have skin in the game? Yeah. And if you believe in yourself, of course you're going to invest in your deals. Absolutely.
Anything else?
Question. Other questions? Any,
And also
internet
remember his
questions?
experience level when he bought this. He was in the industry.
He's got a question.
If I was to exceed, which one are you guys using for like sophisticated and accredited investors, or just accredited?
So the
Okay,
question
somebody's getting a little bit in the weeds. Go ahead.
So the question is do we have sophisticated and accredited investors? So sophistication is you know something about real estate, and after you go through the two-day training, you know a lot about real estate, a lot more than you used to. That makes you sophisticated. Accredited is a net worth and income check. So if you've got a net worth of $1 million or annual income for the past 2 years of $200,000, or as a couple $300,000 for 2 years, you're accredited. When you put these deals together, you can have an unlimited number of accredited investors that have that kind of net worth, but you're limited to only 35 sophisticated. And we've got a mix. So I honestly, sadly, I think I've made a bunch of my sophisticated investors accredited investors now.
Think about it. If you put 100K, you became a millionaire in this deal. Does that make sense? So is that a good thing? There you go. And yes, and I'll teach you this weekend about exactly what he just said about sophisticated versus credit and all that. But the point is everybody in his deal is a Lifestyles member. Now, why do we want all our members to be Lifestyles in our deals? They're not going to question him because they've all been trained up the same way to believe the model that Dell gave us, and they've all followed that, and they all agree the same way.
So So for those of you that are bankers and engineers and lawyers and professional skeptics like I was, I came into this, I'm going to buy the house that I never bought because she lived in the sorority house, doggone it. Anyway, and my son was in the Corps, so he never lived anywhere but the dorm. What we learned is we thought we'd get out of it. Okay, we'll do a deal or two, and then we're off to the races because we knew institutional capital. What we started to realize is institutional capital investors get way into your business. So they're micromanaging you. Because some college kid that graduated from Purdue, they put him in charge of $1 billion in real estate, and his whole job is to call you and give you grief even though he doesn't know what he's talking about, right? But what we started learning is the lifestyles investors know what we know. I get on conference calls with my team on this deal, or I've got another deal where I've got over 100 people in it. And we have long conversations, and we're going through slides worse than this. Any questions before we move on? And Mike, what do I hear? Nothing. I mean, you can't beat that. They understand it. And what do I always tell them? Now's your chance. If you have a question, ask me now so everybody else can hear the answer. Nope, we get it. You can't replace that. That's why institutional capital, in my opinion, can't hold a candle to educated people that I don't have to train. I know plenty of doctors, lawyers, and rich people. But if I let them into a deal, I don't care how much money they can bring to the table, they would wear my butt out with questions every single day about stuff I don't have time to train them in. So I tell all my friends, come join Lifestyles. My lender on this deal that cashed us out twice walked up to us because he had to fly in from Atlanta to see the deal because he thought it was in the hood. We walk him around, we're telling him about the deal, telling him about us. I take him to IHOP for some coffee, and he says, all right, I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to get you your loan. I have one question for you. How do I invest with you? You don't even know me. No, I want to invest with you guys. Well, you're going to have to go join Lifestyles Unlimited. A month later, he calls me up. He flew in from Atlanta to join Lifestyles and went through the same 2-day that you all went through. He said, all right, I'm in. He's in our last 2 deals. His name is Jimmy Mayfield. He lives in Atlanta. He was the chief credit officer for Greystone. And now he's retired. That's the power of Lifestyles. That's the power of what they teach you. If people like that want to come in and join to invest with people like us, I don't need to go anywhere else. Other questions? Do we have any internet questions?
Yeah, do you have some?
They asked, Michael asked, was Casa del Sol your first multifamily deal? And how many have you done?
We've done 3. So we did Casa del Sol in Houston. We bought 360 units on the south side of San Antonio, another disaster that took a while to write. And then we bought Class A 290 units in a historic building in New Braunfels. And they've all done as well or better.
Yeah, one of his apartments was so cool, they filmed something in there, didn't they?
Yeah. So
Here's one of these cool side stories. Everybody remember this one.
So one of the properties was partially developed out of an old power plant, and we bought it from the developer. Well, it's got this really creepy basement because it was a power plant at one time. And a film studio out of Austin came in and said, hey, we'd like to scout your property for a photo or a film shoot. They came in several years and would leave. We never hear from them. Well, last year they came back and said, all right, we're ready to lease it. I said, really? What are you going to do? He said, we're going to be there for 7 days, and we're going to shoot. I said, okay, that'll be $35,000. Done. Oh, by the way, because I've got staff, they're going to have to help you. I'm going to have to charge you $1,000 a day for our staff answering your questions. No problem. They liked it so much they came back and shot for another 10 days. So our net out of the whole thing was about $65,000 for people wanting to shoot a movie in the basement of an old creepy building.
Is that pretty cool or what?
That's 100% occupied because crazy people love living in old creepy buildings and they pay a mountain of rent.
And this property is really unique and really cool. It was the largest power plant in Texas at the time when it was a power plant, right?
Yeah,
So,
when it was
it's
built.
up in New Braunfels, yeah.
So anybody ever been to Worst Fest? Few hands, one, okay. Well, I can tell you've suffered a few
He
hangovers.
likes wieners.
So this is right next to the Worst Fest Fairgrounds in downtown New Braunfels. If you're driving on I-35 and look to your west and you see two smokestacks, you've seen the landmark.
There you go.
Other
All right.
questions?
We're
That's
good?
Somebody else?
First joined a little earlier this year. I got all excited. I really wanted to get into it, and I did. How do you convince your people to hold a property for 5 to 10 years, not receive any distributions the first couple of years? How do you sell it?
Well,
So let me repeat that. So for the people watching, there's a guy in the room from Dallas. He came down here to Houston to listen to case study night because he's buying a property down here. He sat there and said, look, I got really excited to join in. I know he invested in a couple deals already and he's buying some houses already. He's already successful. But he's saying, how do you convince your investors, that want to return right away that you might not get a return for a couple of years to delay that? So how would you answer that, Jerry?
so let's go back to the return slide. Keep going. No, up toward the front. There you
And
go.
I could even share a story about one of Jerry's deals where somebody
you
said,
trying to
I'm
go
not
to?
making a return on one, and they all wanted to pull out in the first year. There were panicky people, and they ended up making a great return on that one too.
So if you look at the returns that we promised, that's what we told them we could do, and what we thought we could do, and we beat it. So all the investors were in for 109% total return, but we beat that. We delivered a higher return than that. So the question begs, and we did refis out of it, right? So we refinanced and pulled their money out. We knew there was a possibility of a refi because we bought it so cheap. At $11,000 a unit, is that cheap? It's selling for $111,000 a unit. So we go back to the last slide where you see the chart. You see the value that we created, and you see what's going on in the marketplace. Who's not going to go along for the ride? We've already gotten our money out twice, and we're still making double-digit returns. Who wouldn't?
Now, let me tell you, too, that this is what a lot of deals look like that we were doing back in 2010. Because you got to remember the financial crisis that was going on. There were a lot of neglected properties that were in similar situations, and it takes a little while to turn those around. So this was not an unusual story that we were selling as a group that were raising money and buying things back then. Today, it's not the same market, it's not the same story. So most things should be returning at least some money, more than this, from the get-go.
And I want people that are new to understand this. On Sunday, when I get to multifamily and I teach you guys, I'm going to talk about a yield play. These are deals that will typically pay returns in the first year. It's an easy, mismanaged property. This was a disaster. He had a lot of experience, so he bought a disaster. And he knew, he told his people, look, first year, second year, you're not going to make a return because I got to kick out the bad people. The occupancy is going to drop. I'm at 40%. I dropped to 20%. I had people there that were living and breathing, but they weren't paying. They had to go. So he knew there was that, that bleeding, and he had to raise extra capital until he hit that break-even point. So they knew this going into the deal. The point is did he do better than what he projected? Yeah. Who likes that he was conservative with his numbers? You understand? My people are taught to go from a point of conservatism. If we make an 8% return, that'd be great by the second year. You know what I mean? So
one other thing is, this is very similar to a development project where you start with raw land and build. The only difference is we had a little bit of a head start because there was a foundation, there was walls. I will tell you that one of the buildings probably should have been condemned, literally. We went in there were termite-eaten studs. We had to scab on. Those of you that know construction know what that means. Kind of rebuild the walls to stabilize the structure. In some ways, we might have been better off just demolishing it and building. But that's what a deep value add is. Right now in this market, because demand is so high for multifamily, you're not finding properties in this level of distress right now. If you were, you'd be paying those kinds of prices. Maybe not that low, but you'd be paying very attractive prices. Will that happen again? Sure, one of these days.
There are still deals out there. I'll give you an example. I invested in a deal last year as a little 100 unit in Corpus Christi, and we bought it for $20K a door, which is like $10K a door back then. Wow. But this property, 100 units, was only 10% occupied. So is that scary? Here we are, over a year later, we're up 600% in our occupancy. In other words, we went from 10% to 60%. Are we still bleeding on that? Did I still make $1 yet on that? No. So the investors in that deal all are like-minded people. No, we're not making money on that till after that second year. Does that make sense? So they went in knowing that. And that might not be, right for everybody in this room, but for other people, it's the big bang on the end. Now, there's other times where I come up here and it's like, yeah, you're making 8% return, 12%, 14%, and then we sell. This is longer term, but would this not have changed the lives of everybody who was in this deal? Absolutely. That's what the bottom line. What's in it for me? Refi, got all my money back. What do you do with that money? That's in another deal. You understand? So you have options.
Are you selling it to them lifestyles?
The question was, are you selling it to another Lifestyles member?
There's a member of Lifestyles that's buying it, but he's not using Lifestyles investors. So he's kind of going his own way. Yeah. But actually, I gave him deference. I mean, there were other buyers that were at the same price, but I gave him deference because I knew how he was trained. Yeah. I knew he knew how to underwrite a deal.
It'll be an easier transaction because he trusts that person. It's good.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Question.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much. Hey, Jerry, one last thing, though. There's a bunch of new people online. There's like 2 or 3 in the room right now. What advice would you give to brand new people, never been to a seminar before? What would be your advice to new people coming in?
Well, I'd ask them what took you so long to start with. But
how many people have lived their life with regrets? Would have, could have, should have. Yeah, you can't go back in time.
I mean, I've told a lot of people that we've got a lot of credentials. I've got enough initials behind my name and various things that you probably wouldn't believe. But that means only one thing. That means I have the worst excuse of anybody in this room for not having done Lifestyle Center. I had to get out of my own way, had to get out of what I already knew. I had to put it all on the shelf because, yeah, I can analyze real estate all day long. I mean, this was easy math for me. But the reality is when it comes time to refit 126 units with new refrigerators, shit, Scott, where do I buy 126 refrigerators? Oh, by the way, I've had a windstorm. Emory, who do I call when I don't know how to deal with the insurance company?
Yep.
Well, that's what I did. And he turned me on to an independent adjuster. So what you have here is you have friends. See this building? There's a building right over there, and there's one right over here. You think the owners of those buildings ever talk? You think that guy, if he reached out for help, would get any help from this guy? And in fact, I know the guy that owns this. No. I hope you drown. I hope you die. I hope you go under because I'm going to buy your property or I'm going to get your tenants. We don't operate that way. We help each other.
Yeah, there are multiple examples where we own across the street from each other and we still share numbers. So.
Yeah. Rising tide floats all boats.
Can I ask one question? Do you still have those spikes on your exterior that punch out the radiator? I've been jealous of those for the past 12 years. My staff refused to allow me to do it. Do you still have them?
Yeah.
Yeah, so to give you an example, this property was so bad that we drove up, and when we took over, we drove up and we were looking for the gates. They were off the hinges. Where are the gates? Oh, they're behind the maintenance shop. So we had to pull the gates out, and they had spikes. They had radiator spikes on them, And so we just left them on. The other thing that we did is
explain what that means, though. It's like, there's something
so
hits the
people
radiator.
will bump gates, right, to try and break the mag lock. So we put a much stronger mag lock on there, a 1,200-pound mag lock. And with the radiator spikes, they're not going to ram their car into the gate.
Poke through the radiator.
And it'll poke through the radiator. So we left that. The other thing that we learned is we increased the height of our gates and put a mag lock on a pedestrian entrance, but people were climbing over the gate even though it was taller. So we got axle grease and grease down 18 inches. Not low enough for kids to reach it, but what you learn is, you know, jerks don't mind holding you up at gunpoint, but they don't want to get dirty. We had cameras, and I remember seeing these three people trying to run in after a car, and we smeared the whole gate with grease, including the radiator spikes. And you see them running up, and the gate's closing, and the guy does this to the girls because he doesn't want to get dirty. It was the most effective tool we used to combat crime. Good question.
I've been begging my staff for 12 years to do that, saying, look, Jerry does it, why can't we do it? And they're all like, oh, it's illegal, you can't do it.
We've had countless inspections. Nobody in the city has ever said a word about it.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jerry. Really
My pleasure.
appreciate it.